Welcome to our channel with interesting episode. Everyone knows the Munsters as TV's most lovable monster family, but in 1965, one episode crossed the line. From illegal props to dangerous stunts, the events of that day were so shocking that the footage was locked away forever. For decades, the cast refused to discuss it. Now, we're uncovering the real reason why this episode never made it to air. The idea for the Munsters didn't begin in the 1960s. It actually dates back to the 1940s when animator Bob Clampett, best known for his work on Looney Tunes, developed a concept for a cartoon about a funny monster family. He worked on it for years, but the project never gained traction. The idea sat dormant, waiting for the right moment to come to life. That moment arrived in the early 1960s when comedy writers Alan Burns and Chris Hayward, famous for their work on Rocky and Bullwinkle, pitched a similar idea. They were inspired by Charles Addams's New Yorker cartoons, which featured a creepy yet endearing family. Instead of creating something entirely new, they turned to Universal Studios, which owned the rights to legendary monsters like Frankenstein and Dracula. The studio saw an opportunity to merge these famous horror icons into a sitcom. This decision shaped the entire show's identity. Herman Munster became a Frankenstein-inspired father with bolts on his neck and a clumsy yet lovable personality. Grandpa was transformed into a comedic take on Count Dracula. The family lived in a massive, eerie mansion on a quiet suburban street. To them, they were just a normal American family, but to everyone else, they were terrifying. Writers Norm Liebman and Ed Haas brought the concept to life with their first pilot episode, Love Thy Monster, which introduced the show's signature satirical tone. The Munsters weren't trying to be scary, they simply wanted to live like any other American family. That contrast was the core of the comedy. The timing couldn't have been better. In the early 1960s, classic monster movies were experiencing a resurgence. Universal had begun re-releasing its old horror films, and audiences were falling in love with them all over again. The idea of blending monsters with sitcom humor was exactly what TV needed at the time. Universal Studios played a crucial role in shaping the Munsters. Since they owned the rights to the classic monster designs, they could use them freely, avoiding any legal issues. This allowed the show to have a distinctive look that paid homage to Hollywood's most famous horror films. The studio also provided high-quality makeup and special effects, with legendary makeup artist Bud Westmore ensuring that Herman, Grandpa, and the rest of the characters looked like real movie monsters while still being expressive enough for comedy. Beyond appearances, Universal's influence extended to the show's tone. Instead of mocking horror movies, the Munsters celebrated them. Fans of classic monster films could enjoy the references, while general audiences could laugh at the family's everyday struggles. At its core, the Munsters was a satire of suburban life. The family considered themselves perfectly normal, they ate dinner together, went to work and school, and worried about everyday problems. However, because of their monstrous appearances, they constantly bewildered and frightened their neighbors. The show cleverly played with this contrast, often flipping traditional sitcom tropes on their heads. The show also poked fun at family sitcom clichés. In one episode, Lily encourages Herman to have a heartfelt father-son talk with Eddie, much like the serious parenting moments in Father Knows Best or Leave It to Beaver. However, Herman's advice is so absurd that the scene turns into a joke. The show frequently used this kind of humor to subvert traditional sitcom moments, making them fresh and funny. Fred Gwynne and Al Lewis didn't just play Herman and Grandpa Munster, they were the heart of the show. Their journey to the Munsters started years earlier on another sitcom, Car 54, Where Are You?, where they played mismatched New York police officers. Their on-screen chemistry was undeniable, and audiences loved them together. More importantly, they became close friends in real life. When the Munsters began casting in early 1964, producers immediately knew who should play Herman and Grandpa. Gwynne and Lewis were the first choices, and their friendship helped make the Munster family feel authentic. Transforming Gwynne into Herman was no easy task. His costume included heavy boots with 4-inch lifts and layers of padding, adding 40 to 50 extra pounds. The intense heat from the studio lights made it even worse. He once lost 10 pounds in a single day of filming. Despite the challenges, he gave every scene his all. His deep voice, goofy laugh, and childlike charm made Herman one of the most unforgettable TV characters of all time. Off-screen, his bond with Lewis remained strong long after the show ended. Not every casting decision was as simple. Originally, the Munster matriarch was named Phoebe, played by Joan Marshall. However, there was a problem: she looked too much like Morticia Addams from The Addams Family, a competing show set to air around the same time. Executives worried audiences would confuse the two series, so they made a change. Phoebe was scrapped and replaced with Lily Munster, which meant finding a new actress. They chose Yvonne De Carlo, best known for her dramatic roles in films like The Ten Commandments. Fred Gwynne and Earl Lewis were skeptical at first, unsure if she could handle comedy. However, De Carlo quickly proved them wrong. She was given one simple direction: play Lily like a classic 1950s housewife, but with a gothic twist. She understood the assignment perfectly. Her elegance and charm balanced Herman's goofy nature, making her an essential part of the Munster family. Butch Patrick, who played Eddie Munster, wasn't the first actor cast in the role. In the unaired pilot, Eddie was played by Nate Happy Durman, whose version of the character was bratty and troublesome. It didn't fit the show's light-hearted tone, so the producers made a change. When Patrick stepped in, he made Eddie more mischievous yet lovable, making him more relatable to young viewers and helping the show connect with families. For Patrick, the Munsters wasn't just a job, it was a defining part of his childhood. Working with Gwynne and Lewis taught him valuable acting lessons, and he has fond memories of his time on set. Even after the show ended, those memories stayed with him. The role of Marilyn Munster also underwent changes. Originally played by Beverly Owen, she left after 13 episodes because she had been pressured into taking the role and was unhappy. She sometimes left the set in tears. Eventually, she found a way to break her contract, and producers needed a replacement. That's when Pat Priest stepped in, fitting seamlessly into the role. Marilyn was the only Munster who looked like a typical young woman, but she never saw her family as strange. To her, they were completely normal, which created plenty of comedic moments. Her presence also provided viewers with a relatable character. Over time, Priest formed strong bonds with her co-stars, and her portrayal of Marilyn became just as beloved as the rest of the Munsters. The Munster Mansion at 1313, Mockingbird Lane wasn't just a setting, it was practically a character itself. The eerie house looked like it belonged in a horror film, yet it had a charm that made it feel like a real home. Inspired by Victorian-era mansions, particularly those in San Francisco, the house had a darker, spookier look to match the Munster family's heritage. The exterior was a mix of a real building and a Hollywood set. Universal Studios modified a backlot house to serve as the Munsters' home, while the interior was built on a soundstage with carefully designed details. From the grand staircase and dusty chandeliers to Grandpa's laboratory in the basement, every part of the house contributed to the show's humor. The home also featured secret passages and hidden rooms, often playing a role in the story. Herman might accidentally smash through a wall, or Grandpa's experiments might go hilariously wrong. Through it all, The Munsters wasn't just a funny show about a monster family, it became an iconic part of television history. The television show The Munsters was much more than just a light-hearted comedy about a monster family living in suburbia. Beneath its jokes and slapstick humor, it carried powerful messages about acceptance, being different, and how society perceives those who do not fit the traditional mold. The show cleverly used its monstrous characters to make a statement about real-world issues while keeping audiences entertained with its charming, comedic storytelling. One of the best examples of this deeper meaning can be found in an episode titled Operation Herman, which aired in 1965. The episode followed Eddie Munster, the young werewolf son, who had to undergo a tonsillectomy. As he rested in the hospital, his devoted father, Herman, desperately wanted to visit him. However, given Herman's towering figure, Frankenstein-like appearance, and unintentionally intimidating demeanor, sneaking into the hospital unnoticed proved nearly impossible. This led to a series of hilarious misunderstandings, classic slapstick humor, and a hospital staff convinced that Herman was a confused patient who had wandered off. Although the episode was filled with comedic moments, there was a heartfelt message at its core. At one point, Lily, Herman's wife, suggested that Herman have an honest, heartfelt conversation with Eddie, similar to the parenting style seen in wholesome family sitcoms of the era. She even referenced Father Knows Best, a show famous for its portrayal of the perfect American family. Herman, in his usual lovable but clueless manner, joked that such emotional talks were the kind of thing handled by Donna Reed on The Donna Reed Show. This moment was small but significant. It subtly acknowledged that the Munsters was not trying to be like those traditional, polished sitcoms. Instead, it was something unique, a show that truly understood what it felt like to be different and not always accepted by the world. This theme of feeling out of place and being judged for appearances was central to many episodes. In My Fair Munster, a neighbor complained that the neighborhood was perfectly fine until the Munsters moved in. While the line was delivered as a joke, it reflected real-life discrimination faced by many families in the 1960s simply for being different. Another episode, Munster Masquerade, pushed this idea even further. Marilyn Munster, the only family member who looked traditionally human, had a boyfriend whose parents were excited to meet her. However, when they discovered that she came from a household filled with monsters, their enthusiasm quickly turned into rejection. This episode cleverly flipped expectations. While Marilyn was seen as the odd one out within her family, to the outside world, she was the only one who belonged. The message was clear: people often judge others based on appearances, and these judgments can be unfair and hurtful. Perhaps one of the most powerful moments in the entire series came in the episode Eddie's Nickname. Eddie Munster was feeling insecure about himself, and his father, Herman, decided to offer some words of wisdom. In what became one of the show's most memorable speeches, Herman told Eddie, "The lesson I want you to learn is that it doesn't matter what you look like, whether you are tall or short, fat or thin, ugly or handsome, like your father. You can be black or yellow or white, it doesn't matter. What matters is the size of your heart and the strength of your character." For a light-hearted sitcom, this was a bold and meaningful moment. It wasn't hidden behind humor or softened by a joke, it was direct, heartfelt, and impactful. This kind of sincerity was rare for sitcoms of that era, and it resonated deeply with audiences. It was a statement about the importance of looking beyond appearances and valuing people for who they truly are. When the Munsters premiered on September 24, 1964, it was unlike anything that had ever been seen on television before. It took the traditional family sitcom format and gave it a monstrous twist. Instead of the usual suburban parents and children, it featured a Frankenstein-like father, Herman, a vampire mother, Lily, a werewolf son, Eddie, and a grandfather straight out of classic horror films. The show's unusual concept worked surprisingly well, mixing comedy with classic monster tropes in a way that captivated audiences. By the end of its first season, the Munsters had become one of the most popular shows on television, ranking number 18 in the Nielsen ratings, right alongside Gilligan's Island. Critics also took notice of the show's success. In 1965, the Munsters received a Golden Globe nomination for Best TV Show, an impressive recognition for a comedy with such an unconventional premise. Over the years, it continued to earn praise, receiving multiple nominations at the TV Land Awards, which celebrated its lasting impact on television history. One particular award acknowledged a significant cast change when Pat Priest replaced Beverly Owen as Marilyn Munster. Despite the major role being recast, the show remained strong, proving the resilience of its beloved characters. However, no show stays on top forever. In January 1966, something new arrived on ABC, Batman. With its bright colors, action-packed episodes, and campy sense of fun, Batman quickly captured audiences' attention. The viewers who had once tuned in religiously to the Munsters now had their eyes glued to Gotham City. As a result, the Munsters saw a sharp decline in ratings. By the end of its second season, it had fallen to number 61 in the rankings. Seeing the writing on the wall, the network made the difficult decision to cancel the show in May 1966. Despite its cancellation, the Munsters refused to fade into obscurity. Over the years, various spin-offs, films, and reboots have kept the characters alive. One of the most notable follow-ups was The Munsters Today, which aired from 1988 to 1991. Instead of continuing directly from the original, this sequel series introduced a creative twist. Grandpa had accidentally put the family into a deep sleep for 22 years. When they finally woke up, they found themselves in the late 1980s, struggling to adjust to a modern world. With Lee Merriweather as Lily, Jason Marston as Eddie, and Howard Morton as Grandpa, the show managed to outlast the original series, running for 73 episodes. The first full-length Munsters movie came much earlier, in 1966, right as the original series was ending. Munster, Go Home, marked the first time audiences saw the characters in color, making their eerie yet endearing appearances even more striking. The film followed Herman as he inherited a British manor, leading to a wild adventure in England involving scheming relatives, a hidden treasure, and even a drag race. With Fred Gwynne, Yvonne De Carlo, and Hull Lewis reprising their iconic roles, the film captured the spirit of the show perfectly. Over the decades, numerous attempts have been made to revive the Munsters. Some efforts, like the 2012 Mockingbird Lane pilot directed by Bryan Singer, never made it past a single episode. Others, like Rob Zombie's 2022 feature film, had mixed receptions but still managed to introduce a new generation to the beloved monster family. Despite their ups and downs, the legacy of the Munsters remains strong. Its influence can be seen in countless TV shows, from The Simpsons to Stranger Things, and its iconic theme song has been covered by multiple artists over the years. But at its core, what made the Munsters so special was its message. Being different isn't something to be feared, it's something to be celebrated. And that's a lesson that will never go out of style.